Picture this. It's Thursday, April 1976. You've walked past the corner shop every day for 3 weeks, staring at that one Cadbury's egg in the window. The foil is so bright it catches the spring sun. Your name is on the label, if you're lucky. You ask for it, and your mum says those 2 words that defined a generation. Not yet. Today, British retailers begin stocking Easter eggs 12 weeks before Easter Sunday. 12 weeks. We spend over £400 million a year on them. The average British child now receives between 5 and 10 eggs. 5 to 10. And yet, and here is the question that has been nagging at you for years. Why does Easter feel so empty now, when there is more chocolate than ever? We have been sold a lie. The lie that more means better. That abundance equals happiness. But the science of memory proves the exact opposite. Scarcity creates meaning. Waiting creates joy. 1 egg, saved for, longed for, held carefully in both hands. That was sacred. That was magic. So what exactly did we lose when we traded not yet for right now? Today, we are going back. Back to the rituals, the smells, and the silence of a 1970s British Easter. Back to the thing that made it matter. And back to the moment, the quiet, unremarkable moment, when it all started to disappear. This is the story of the Easter you remember. The build-up. Before we talk about Easter Sunday, we need to talk about the 6 weeks before it. Because in 1970s, Britain, Easter didn't just arrive, it was earned. It started with Lent. And Lent was real. Most families, whether they were deeply religious or just loosely Church of England in that very British twice-a-year way, observed it in some form. You gave something up. Sweets usually, biscuits, pudding after tea. 6 weeks of going without the things you loved most. 6 weeks of saying no every single day, while the adverts on the telly said, yes, yes, yes. By the time Easter Sunday finally arrived, you had been practicing patience for a month and a half. You had been building towards something. That is not a small thing. That is everything. Then there were the adverts. The Cadbury cream egg launched in its modern form in 1971. And by the mid-1970s, those adverts were running on British television for 4 solid weeks before Easter. 4 weeks, on 3 channels. You could not avoid them, and you did not want to. That same jingle, that same silly kid with chocolate running down their chin. You watched it every time, every single time, because there was no skipping. There was no fast forward. You sat there, and you watched, and you wanted. We tend to think of the 1970s as a simpler, less commercial time, and in some ways it was. But Cadbury were running clever, emotionally targeted television campaigns aimed directly at children from the very beginning of that decade. The difference was not that Easter was less commercial then. The difference was that there were only 3 channels, so everyone saw the same advert at the same time, and that shared experience, that collective wanting, turned a chocolate egg into a cultural event. And then there was the shop window. Sometime in late February or early March, they appeared. Boxed in cellophane. Names you knew. Buttons, Dairy Box, the cream egg 4-packs. You walked past every day on the way to school. You made your choice weeks in advance. You pointed, you hinted, you pointed again. And your mum said nothing, which meant everything. That window was not a shop display. That window was a countdown. Good Friday. Good Friday in 1970s, Britain was unlike any other day of the year. And the first thing you noticed when you woke up was the glorious smell of hot cross buns. Not from a supermarket 6-pack bought a week ago. From the baker's, on the morning itself, still warm. Your mum might have queued for them. You ate them toasted, with butter that melted straight into the cross. That was breakfast. That was the rule. Nobody questioned it. Nobody needed to. Here is the thing about hot cross buns that we have completely lost. They used to mean something because you could only get them once a year. One day, one morning, that was it. British supermarkets now begin stocking hot cross buns as early as January. The specialness did not gradually fade. It was actively taken away, one calendar month at a time, until the thing that made Good Friday feel like Good Friday simply ceased to exist. And then there was the quiet. Good Friday in the 1970s meant closed. Not reduced hours, not a skeleton staff. Closed. The streets were quieter, the telly was slower. Until 1972, British broadcasting regulations actually required both BBC and ITV to air only religious programming on Sunday evenings. That culture of imposed stillness still echoed powerfully through Good Friday well into the mid-70s. Songs of praise, hymns in the afternoon, slower, gentler television that felt entirely unlike every other day of the week. As children, you moaned about it. Of course you did. But here is the thing. That enforced quiet did something to you that you did not notice at the time. It made the day feel different, significant, set apart. And when a day feels set apart, everything that happens in it carries more weight. The bun tastes better. The anticipation builds higher. The Sunday feels more earned. We do not have slow days like that anymore. Not really. And we underestimate what losing them has cost us. Then there was fish for dinner. Whether your family was religious or completely indifferent to the whole thing, there is a very good chance you had fish on Good Friday. It was not necessarily piety. It was not a statement. It was simply what you did. That kind of quiet, half-understood ritual, inherited without explanation, observed without question, bound communities together in ways that nobody fully appreciated until it was gone. Easter Sunday morning. Right, this is the moment. This is what you came for. Easter Sunday morning in 1970s Britain. You were up before anyone else. You already knew roughly where it was, on the breakfast table, or at the foot of the bed, or on the settee if your parents were feeling theatrical about it. And there it was. One egg, maybe two if your grandparents had been generous. Not a pile, not a basket. One carefully chosen egg, still in its box, foil completely intact, sitting there like something important. Because it was something important, you picked it up. You felt the weight of it. You decided, do you eat the chocolate bar from inside the box first, or do you crack the egg itself? This was not a small decision. This required thought. And here is the revelation that sits at the very heart of all of this. Research into childhood memory and happiness shows consistently that it is scarcity, not abundance, that creates our deepest, most lasting joy. The things we waited for, the things we had to earn, the things that came once and mattered precisely because they did not come twice. The children growing up today with 10 Easter eggs will not remember most of them. They will not remember the weight of them, or the decision about which end to break first, or the specific crinkle of the foil. Because when something is everywhere, it registers as background noise. But the children who grew up in the 1970s, who had one egg and truly wanted it, they remember everything. The box, the smell, the kitchen table, the look on their mum's face. 50 years on, they remember everything. More chocolate, less magic. That is not a coincidence. That is how human memory actually works. And then there was the rest of Easter Sunday. Best clothes, the ones you hated putting on and your mum made you wear anyway. The walk to church, even if your family only managed it twice a year. The big family dinner with everyone round the table, grandparents, aunties, the cousin you liked, and the one you didn't. Roast lamb if the budget stretched, chicken if it didn't, proper gravy, the good plates. The table that wasn't normally a table, it was just furniture, suddenly transformed into something that said, "Today is different, today matters." Somewhere nearby, on the village green, in the school playground, at the church hall, there was probably an egg and spoon race. There were bonnets made from paper plates and tissue paper. There was egg rolling down a hill if you lived somewhere with a hill worth rolling eggs down. None of it cost a penny, and all of it meant everything to a 9-year-old in April 1976. Easter on the telly. After dinner, the family moved to the front room, and the telly went on. 3 channels. That was it. BBC One, BBC Two, and ITV. You consulted the Radio Times, or the TV Times if your family was an ITV household, and the difference mattered. Don't let anyone tell you it didn't. And you circled what you were watching. You didn't browse. You didn't scroll. You chose, you sat down, and you watched it together, in the same room, at the same time as roughly 20 million other people across Britain. Easter Sunday evening television had its own particular atmosphere. Earlier in the decade especially, the broadcasting conventions around Sunday evenings meant the tone was gentler, slower, more reflective. Songs of praise, a Sunday evening film, light entertainment that knew what day it was. Children found it boring at the time. Of course they did. But here is something worth sitting with. The adults who grew up watching that television, in those rooms, on those Easter evenings. They describe it now with a specific kind of ache. Not for the programs themselves, for the feeling of being in that room, together, going nowhere, needing nothing. That shared cultural moment, the thing where the whole country was, briefly pointed at the same screen, is not something a streaming service can replicate. It is not a feature you can add back in. It was a product of limitation, and we deleted it the moment we got the choice. The children who didn't get an egg. Now, before we go any further, there is something we need to say honestly, because the nostalgia is real, but it does not belong equally to everyone who lived through it. The 1970s were economically brutal for millions of British families. Inflation hit 25% in 1975. Unemployment rose sharply throughout the decade. The 3-day working week, the power cuts, the strikes. These were not distant news stories. They were happening in your street, to your neighbours, sometimes to your own family. And for a significant number of British children, Easter meant no egg. It meant a long weekend with the shops shut and nothing special on the table, and the sinking awareness at 9 years old that your Easter did not look like the one on the telly. Every street had that child, the one who stood at the corner shop window just like everyone else, who pointed and hinted and hoped, and whose parents could not stretch to the egg in the blue box, however much they wanted to. That child still remembers too, and their memory of 1970s Easter is part of this story, just as much as the warm kitchen and the good plates and the walk to church in the spring sunshine. We owe it to them not to pretend that every Easter was the same. So, was Easter actually better in the 1970s? Or are we just missing being children? Honestly, both things are true, and they are not the same thing. What we are really missing is not the chocolate. There is more of that now than ever. We are not missing the food, or the time off, or even the family dinner. Most of us can still have those things if we choose to. What we are missing is something harder to buy back, the scarcity that created meaning, the waiting that made the Sunday feel earned, the shared national moment pointed at the same screen, all of us in it together, the rituals that did not need to be explained because everyone around you was doing exactly the same thing. Those things did not disappear all at once. They thinned out, slowly, quietly, 1 year at a time. hot cross buns in January, Easter eggs in the shops by February, the corner shop replaced by a supermarket that never closes, 3 channels replaced by 3,000, the family scattered across different sofas, different screens, different worlds. We did not notice it going because it went gradually, but it went. I want to know one thing from you, just one. Drop it in the comments below. What is the one Easter memory from 1970s Britain that just came back to you watching this? The smell, the egg, the walk to church, the telly, whatever it is, write it down. Because these memories deserve to be kept somewhere, and this community is as good a place as any. If this took you back, share it with someone who was there. And if you want more of this, more of the Britain we grew up in, told the way it actually felt, then make sure you're subscribed, because there is plenty more where this came from. See you next time.